on this is how we account for intentionality.
You can't do it without making an appeal to the law. You can't do it. You can't explain it to me logically.
The body of laws have accounted for how do you get over that intentionality thing. If you use the same thing, which is when somebody says there's a war crime.
Welcome back everyone. I had massive respect for Dave Smith already for all the amazing work he's been doing, but after this debate my respect levels are on another level. Previously he was on the Joe Rogan show with Douglas Murray, a 2.5 hour debate which I thought was a complete waste of time. One part of the debate Douglas kept banging on about was, well, if you haven't been to Israel then how can you know anything? This time Dave Smith, a once comedian, is up against John Spencer, an executive director of urban warfare, and Dave not only schools him but runs circles round him. You'll see for yourself. Let's take a look.
The last point about he's been there, one of Douglas Murray's attack lines with you was that unlike him, who regularly goes to Israel, he regularly goes to Ukraine, you don't go to these places that you then opine on. Personally, I don't think you need to go to the sun to know it's hot.
Dave didn't have giant logical holes in what he's saying, like about the blockade or about the bombing or things like this, then you don't have to go there. There are many ways to do research. I'm saying Dave doesn't do that.
Okay, so I'll say Piers, it's both. I feel like both in this debate and in the debate with Douglas Murray, it almost kind of feels like the analogy I'd use is like if two fighters agreed to fight. Two guys in the UFC, they agree to fight, and so they show up under the lights, and you get into the cage, and I put my hands up, and then the other guy puts his hands down and starts telling me what a better fighter he is than me. And you're like, okay, well then let's do it. I don't know, let's have the conversation. Instead of all this time just telling me you're an expert. Hold on, wait, 1 second. Let me finish my point since you had some time to talk there. Look, all of this stuff about whether you have to be there. By the way, it's going viral online, but there's this great clip of Douglas Murray taking apart the lived experience argument from the left and making all these points about how people who were never in the Holocaust have written much more beautifully and accurate about the Holocaust than people who actually went through it themselves. If you want to say that you gain if you want to say you have expertise, or you want to say going there gives you some more expertise, then sure. I mean, I wouldn't argue that. No one's arguing that you can't learn about a place from going there. But again, this is the fighter putting his hands down and going, I've trained so much harder than you. I'm such a better boxer than you. You could never hang with me. Okay, so let's get it going. Anyway, in terms of, by the way, there is absolutely no chance, and I haven't examined Douglas Murray's passport, but there's no chance that he's not a hypocrite on this issue. I guarantee he has not been to all of the places that he's commented on. I don't know. He's commented on every foreign country and what's going on geopolitically for 20 years. I'm sure he hasn't visited all of those places. Back to the point, because it seems like in these things we do everything except actually debate the issue. You missed my entire point. Once you're appealing to the law or appealing to how warfare actually works, you're missing the entire point that I was making. My point is that this is not how the law works, and this is not how war actually works. I'm making a much more basic human point, a fundamental point. Look, Piers, the other day, okay.
Let's look at the people who are from Israel. David Mensa, Mr. Piggy. Has he said anything even worth talking about? No. Jonathan Conricus, exactly the same, if not worse. Why do I do videos of them if that's the case? Well, to showcase their ignorance and stupidity to the world. No other reason. You can tell just by looking at Dave that he is clearly passionate about this and he knows what he's talking about.
This is, and by the way, if you don't want to believe this story, it's fine. It's just one firsthand account from Gaza. But whether it's true or not, and there's no reason to suspect it's not true, but whether it's true or not, there's just been hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of examples like this. But so there was a woman, a building collapsed. She says, as she's walking down the building, she can hear the little kids, not 16-year-old members of Hamas. You're talking 4- and 5-year-olds screaming for their mothers while they're buried underneath the rubble, screaming for help from their mommy. And you know what, Piers? No help is coming because there's no bulldozers in Gaza. Nobody's coming to get those kids out. This is the reality of war. And this is what this is the main point that I was trying to make to Douglas Murray, which he kept running away from. If you're going to say that our goal here is to degrade Hamas, Murray conceded you probably can't eliminate them, but he feels like you can degrade them. If you're going to degrade Hamas, and the cost of it is those little children dying under rubble, screaming for their mother as their bones are crushed and no one's coming to help them, then fine. but at least say that you find that price acceptable. And then we could have a real conversation about why people are going to view you as a monster and why the other side will never stop fighting and will always be against you. Because I could tell you for sure, if that was my kids, and I know, Piers, if those were your kids as well, you wouldn't want to hear anything about how, well, we've codified in international law that this is the norm of the way wars are allowed to be fought versus not allowed to be fought. I'm making a very human point that this is the reality of war. And you can say under international humanitarian law, it's not considered intentional. We would consider this an intentional act in any other area. That's the point. It's a very basic human point that if anyone were to do this domestically and then tried to use the defense of like, no, but I dropped a leaflet. No, I didn't really want to kill them. I just wanted to kill them. We'd go, I don't care. You blew up a building knowing there were kids in there. That's the essence of this whole thing. And there's no amount, there's no amount of expertise that can really get you away from this basic fundamental moral logic.
Dave is just getting started here amongst all the debates and this tit for tat about who started this and arguing like children. We forget that innocent lives are brutally being taken away. Unlike these pro-Israelis who keep banging on about Hamas, the more human amongst us, like Dave, try to get to the crux of the problem whilst reminding the rest of the world that whilst we bicker in our comfortable homes, in our comfortable lives, we forget the suffering that's happening around us.
Hamas started a war on October 7th. Hamas is going to lose a war and it's going to never be in power again. It's never in Hamas is the one that says they want to do October 7th. But Dave says, just put the wall up. They won't be able to do it on October 7th ever again, right? You had this blockade, although there was 100 tunnels going from Egypt to Gaza to build this military that Hamas built. And he'll say that Netanyahu sent him money. He's not making an appeal to facts. This is what we have a problem with Dave Smith. He makes an appeal to emotion and does historical revisionism. And he tells these narratives that aren't true.
Piers,
so his
can I just tell you, Piers?
Fails. He's anti-war.
What's so funny about this, Piers? Okay, what's so funny about this, Piers, is that after all of this, once again, all of this, I'm an expert, you don't know this, I'm an expert, you haven't studied military 101, then after all of that, the substance of what we're left with is... Right, okay, got it. After all of that, the substance that we're left with is Hamas started the war on October 7th. Yes, the most basic point that every pro-Israel person has made on this show forever. That's what you've got here. Okay.
I got a fact.
It's
now
not
you want
a
to
fact.
debate the facts
it's not a
how
fact.
Israel
Israel's
could achieve that goal.
By the way, you also don't even know what an appeal. It's not an appeal to emotion, by the way. That's not what it is, although you do seem to be flirting with an appeal to authority.
Right? You can't
No, it's an appeal to morality. For me to describe the actual human impact of what this policy is resulting in is not an appeal to emotion. I mean, it's an appeal to morality and it's an appeal to logic.
This is exactly the reason why peace is so hard to get to. How is peace even possible when the genocidal state is not only supported financially but also doesn't have to worry of facing any legal repercussions? There's no reason for them to stop, and until then, they can continue to use the same reasoning they have done for the last 18 months, and I guarantee if this war continues, then the same reasoning will also continue.
The appeal to logic. Look, you can't answer me this very simple question, okay? Here's the very simple question, okay? You'd have to admit, look, let's take the worst example, just not your example where there's a Hamas rocket firing at Israel.
Give me Gaza. Don't give me a hypothetical and the morals of the law of war. Give me
I was about to. If you interrupted me, I was on my way to. Let's say Israel targets an area where there are 2 combatants and 2 civilians. It's your 1-to-1 ratio, okay? And they decide that's acceptable by the international laws of war or whatever. By the way, in your appeal to the international laws, you didn't mention the ICC warrant for Netanyahu, which they don't seem to be respecting that much. But anyway, but we're still, you can still appeal to this framework even though they never have to live up to it. But let's just say, okay, the exact same action happened domestically. If someone were to do that, you would call it intentional murder, right? How does the concept of intentionality change because a politician uttered the word war, they declared it, and it's taking place in a foreign country? Without appealing to authority or appealing to law or appealing to what war normally is, can you as a human being explain to me how the concept of intentional changes magically because a politician uttered the phrase war?
Well, the thing about the politician, it's the framework. So yes, I can give you, and this is literally you're explaining in the question how you don't know how the framework of a war works. And
so teach me. Stop telling me I don't know. Stop telling me I don't know and demonstrate it.
Teach me I didn't say you don't know. your question. I'll teach you something. Your domestic law has a complete societal agreement on what those laws will be adjudicated and how they'll be determined.
No, it doesn't.
How a criminal deterrence, absolutely. American law.
Lots of people don't agree to the law.
If you kill somebody, then you'll be convicted of a crime based on a jury and a judge, all this. Then you want to apply that on war, but then disregard what the laws of war, the things that all nations have agreed to on. This is how we account for intentionality.
You can't do it without making an appeal to the law. You can't do it. You can't explain it to me logically.
The body of laws have accounted for how do you get over that intentionality thing. If you use the same thing, which is when somebody says there's a war crime.
I don't think he understood the question, which is a shame really, as he's meant to be an executive for urban warfare. We've seen it time and time again. Regardless what profession you bring on to debate this topic, it becomes very, very difficult to justify what Israel is doing. Near enough impossible. Anyway, big thanks to Dave for all his hard work. Thanks to you guys for watching and supporting. Like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.